What makes young people crave the rave?
I'm curious what makes you so curious.
In the beginning was the beat.
Welcome to the Rave Curious podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Glazer. What are we curious about? We're curious about electronic music and the culture that surrounds it. And how do we satisfy that curiosity? We do it by talking to some of the people who have dedicated their lives to the electronic music scene, the DJs, producers, promoters, and more. My guest on today's podcast is Mr. C, one of the elder statesmen of underground house and techno, originally from the UK, now residing in Los Angeles, where he runs the Superfreak label and throws parties and DJs around the world under that banner. I actually met Mr. C about a year ago. Originally, I was doing an article on him for a magazine, and we got to talking a lot about the Los Angeles scene at the time. That was really kind of the focus of our conversation, and it was a very positive conversation. He really got me interested. At the time, I was still living in Berlin. Those of you who listen to this podcast often probably know this story, but I had lived in Los Angeles for about 8-9 years. And then I had moved to Berlin. I lived in Berlin for 4 years. And then 9 months ago, I moved back here to LA and started doing this podcast. So that's not why I moved to LA. It wasn't to do a podcast. But obviously, moving from Berlin to Los Angeles, one of the things I had to reckon with was a significant decrease in my techno clubbing options. Obviously, Los Angeles has a lot going on right now. When I left LA, it was easy to go a week or weeks or months without there being a really good underground party with really good music. I mean, there was some stuff going on. A club called Rhonda had launched by then. There was there was definitely things happening, but not at the level that's happening today, where every weekend in LA there's 2 or 3 or 4 events that I would consider going to from just a musical perspective. So that's when I was moving back here, I was curious what it would be like, and talking to Mr. C, I had it made me more optimistic than I might have been otherwise. Having said that, I've now been in Los Angeles for about 9 months. I've probably gone to at least a dozen parties, if not more. And they've been okay, but they haven't been great. And part of that is just coming from Berlin. And when you're in Berlin, I've always said Berlin ruins clubbing everywhere else in the world. And to a point that is true, but particularly in LA, whether it's a good DJ playing at a bottle service club in Hollywood, or a warehouse party where the music's good but the sound system kind of sucks. There's just it always seems to be lacking one or two elements that all need to all come together to make a party really gel, and that's been frustrating. So that's something I actually talked to Mr. C about on this podcast. We started a little bit kind of picking up where we left off and how things are here in LA right now. That said, it's funny, right before I recorded this, last night, I went out. It was a Sunday, and there was a party going on in downtown, like right in the middle of Skid Row. Real sketchy warehouse kind of scenario, but with Konstantin from Giglings in Berlin was DJing. He was playing a 7-hour set from 3 p.m. till 10 p.m., which for my old Uncle Techno is kind of the perfect time to go to a party. The staying out all night thing gets harder and harder. So if I can go hear good music without completely ruining my sleep schedule, that is a huge bonus. And so, I went to this party, not expecting a whole lot, expecting good music, but not sure what the rest of the scene would be like. And I gotta say, the scene was really good. A couple hundred people, really into the music, great energy, lot of freaks, a lot of weirdos. And yeah, it was a really good time. So I guess my opinion on Los Angeles clubbing might be evolving even since this podcast was recorded. So yeah, so we're going to hear that interview. But before we get to that, there's actually a second brief conversation that I had with Jason Swamy. Jason is one of the co-founders and creative director of Robot Heart, the Burning Man camp, famous for bringing, kind of techno and tech house to the playa. And he also runs, or is one of the principal people in the Further Future Festival, which happens every spring outside of Las Vegas. Well, every spring. It started last spring, and it's happening again this spring. The idea being to combine an electronic music festival with more of a conference type vibe, covering food, technology, wellness, and I'll let Jason does a good job in describing that. That's actually another thing that kind of didn't really exist when I left LA. I mean, obviously Burning Man existed. Robot Heart is going on their 9-year anniversary this year. So it did exist, but not nearly to the extent that it exists since my return. So if this episode does have a theme, I guess the theme would be the developments in Los Angeles and West Coast electronic music in my absence. Now, not to say this episode is entirely about LA. If you're sitting there thinking, God, I really don't care about LA, there is there's other stuff that we talk about, particularly with Mr. C. We talk about a lot, but there is some LA here, and why not? Because I live in LA, and from what they tell me, it is one of the epicenters of electronic music in a way it has not been before. So you be the judge. Quick note. I record these podcasts kind of all over the place. The first few episodes were actually recorded in my flat when I was still living in Berlin. I've recorded some in hotel rooms. I've recorded some in parks, but I've also recorded a lot of them at the Vice offices here in Venice, California. That's where these interviews were recorded. And for some reason, I don't know why, but my mic in particular is hot. So I'm not going to get into the technical reasons as to why. Fortunately, I don't talk too much during these episodes, but you will definitely hear a kind of distortion on my voice, and we're gonna get that figured out. But obviously, all these people took time to come to the studio. Mr. C, he came and met me on a Sunday afternoon, the day after he threw a party in LA. So I'm not gonna throw these recordings out just because of a hot mic, but I am gonna tell you that's unfortunately what happened here, and hopefully it's not too irritating, and we're going to fix it next time. So yeah, that's it. Of course, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, subscribe on iTunes, leave a review on iTunes. You don't even have to write anything. You can just give us 5 stars or 4 stars, but 5 stars would be cooler. Or just listen and enjoy first my conversation with Jason Swamy, and then it's going to go right into a longer conversation, a full conversation with Mr. C. Thanks for listening. Swamy. Okay.
Swamy, yeah.
Swamy, like...
Yeah, like the guru, yeah. My father's Indian, so...
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So that is where it came from.
That is, so it's an actual thing. It's not
not my nickname.
I got... Oh, that's your actual birth name?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so...
That's actually very surprising. I think most people, they see your name and they see
Yeah,
talking to you and looking at you, you're like, okay, that makes sense. But if you saw this, like this guy Jason Swamy, and he plays Burning Man, you're like,
yeah, my
really?
name goes. I mean,
really?
most
Swamy?
people I go by Swamy because there's so many Jasons out there. So they just, and it was my DJ name for a decade or more. So I think people think it's a nickname or I made it up for like my DJ name.
Or it could be like a predestiny thing because you can't really have the name Swamy and be, I don't know, a drum and bass DJ from England. Like you were kind of predestined to go in this direction.
Yeah, I guess it's a manifest destiny kind of self-fulfilling prophecy kind of stuff. Yeah.
Would John F. Kennedy be John F. Kennedy if his name was Harold?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of those kind of things. So to start off, and we just flow right into this. So there's not a lot of formalities, but the first thing I want to ask is I want to familiarize people with who you are and what you do, because you're a DJ. Which I have way too many DJs on this podcast, but you're
Yeah.
also a promoter, a creative director,
Yeah.
things like that. And I know there's some. I was told by Russell that there is some delicacies into how what you do is presented.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we get it right, and we're just gonna lay it out right now.
Yeah.
That way, if I slip up and say the wrong thing 10, 15 minutes from now, people know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
It doesn't
appreciate
count.
that,
Nobody
yeah.
gets. So tell me, explain to me who you are, what you do.
Jason Swamy, creative director, co-founder of For the Future. I'm also a partner at Wonderfruit, another project that I'm involved in Thailand. Music director, entertainment director at Robot Heart. And yeah, I think in a nutshell,
Okay.
that's what I do. Yeah.
Okay. So just to specify, For the Future Festival.
Yeah, for the
Is it-
future, well, for lack of better terms, right now in its current guise, it's known as a festival because I don't think there's a word that out there that we can help define what we are. It's kind of like saying Burning Man is a festival. It really isn't. I mean, it's to me, it's a ephemeral, ethereal city that it's like an oasis that appears and disappears. For us, for the future, our goal is to develop a community, and the first step of developing a community is having this event, this annual event, and that's just a first stepping stone. But it's really a lifestyle company, the way I look at it,
Okay.
the way our team look at it.
So and then what about Wonderfruit?
Wonderfruit again it's also another project that's lifestyle driven. That's Asia focused, and that's focused really around sustainable living, permaculture, eco friendly, family friendly lifestyle.
Right. And of course, Robot Heart is probably the name most people are familiar with. I feel like it's what you've been doing the longest.
Yeah, RoboHeart is something we've been doing. It was born out of Burning Man. It was a platform. It's a double-decker bus, to put it very simply. It's a double-decker bus with a lot of technology on it, and a one-of-a-kind sound system. And we use that platform to showcase and program a particular sound of music that we coined Playa Tech, and we were doing something that was very different than most other people. We didn't feel there was a need to communicate what we were doing because for us it was our contribution to Burning Man as a gift like anyone else, like someone serving burritos and mojitos in the morning. There was no need to stand up on a soapbox and say, "Hey, look at me, we did this," because there was no commercial value or monetization out of it. But over the years we developed a following, and there was a great platform, and we felt like there was something that we could do that was more responsible and purposeful.
Within Robot Heart or
within Robot Heart.
Heart.
So basically, from that team, we kind of from the same team, we realized that a lot of our people with the community we developed, we shared the same aspirations, we shared the same philosophy and ethos in life, and we thought, well, why not go out there and actively create a larger platform that addresses these aspects of life, this particular lifestyle, and create this community, and that being reflected in the pillars of gastronomy, art, technology, wellness, and of course music being the catalyst and the glue.
Okay, so let's go back to. I want to go all the way back to the beginning, but I think at the start of Robot Heart.
Yeah.
Let's say, because I think a lot of people now they obviously they think of Burning Man and they think of these almost like brands within the larger brand. Robot Heart being probably the most well known. It's everybody waits, like if you're not at Burning Man, you're waiting for the Robot Heart sets to go online from Burning Man. But you were telling me it didn't really start out that way. When did it start?
It started in 2007. I was invited by some dear friends of mine who were already burners from another camp, and they wanted to start their own camp. And I was kind of I've always heard of it. I mean, Lee Burge and Scumfrog and other people had told me always to go, and I just thought it was some sort of hippie thing that really didn't resonate with me because I was more on the urban club side of things. But then I was very wrong, and when I was moving back to Asia at that point, I said, oh, okay, why not? In 2007, George Mueller and several other people, Walt and Michael Calabrese, they were starting this new camp, and I I was looking at the plans that they're doing CAD of this double-decker bus they just purchased, and they were putting a lot of technology on it, and they wanted to start this new camp, and I was like, oh, why not? That first year, I ended up playing 40 hours that week, which is pretty intense.
Okay. So you hadn't even been to Burning Man.
No, I had
before.
never been. So my first year, my perspective pretty skewed. All I
Right.
know is that particular
You've
aspect
yeah.
almost.
You've never just like tented it and
Yeah, no, for better for worse, yeah. But it wasn't like, I mean, just to correct the impression, while the bus is very high tech and there's a lot of things going on there, our camp is pretty much a work camp. We dedicate all our efforts and skill sets into putting on this experience for everyone. So it's not like we have all this glamping
right.
perception that people may think, or even though we're put on this thing called the Billionaire Row or something, it's totally not that. And we don't have chefs and beautiful shower pods and things like that. I mean, we were eating canned food and sharing RVs, or even staying in yurts and tents just like everyone else.
So okay, so maybe we do need to go back a little further. Why don't we start? Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I'm from Hong Kong, born in Hong Kong, but I grew up in the U.S., went to high school in California, and went to college in Boston, and then lived in New York for 13 years. My first job out of college was in the internet. Was it for an internet firm called iTraffic, which invented the banner advertising. It was bought over by agency.com, an internet consultancy at that point. So they were the first to start monetizing ads.
You broke the internet.
Yeah,
You were the first person to break the internet.
I was working for someone who had figured out how to monetize.
So, and this would have been what, the late 90s, I guess?
Yeah, late 90s. It was just, I mean, literally 3 years or 4 years before the internet bubble burst. So at that point, after it burst, I was a bedroom DJ, and at that point you're sitting there like, okay, what am I going to do next? And I was a bedroom DJ and I started throwing parties, and the parties evolved into starting my own nights across New York. We started this night called Le Souk Sunday Sessions, which was a seminal club night that happened on Sunday in New York. A lot of prominent DJs played there unannounced, and it was a cultural phenomenon, I think, in New York. Many DJs around the world played there. Then from that it triggered Sullivan Room, which was another New York staple in the club scene, which recently shut down after a good God knows.
Yeah, I think that's one of those, like, they announced that Sullivan Room was closing, everyone kind of looked at each other and said, Sullivan Room's still open?
Still around, yeah. I think it was a 15-year run or something.
Yeah. But yeah, it definitely had a point. Like, I guess, like, I remember going there. Who was it? Tronic treatment parties were there. That's what I went for in like the early to mid 2000s.
Yeah, that was Monday nights. So I was Saturday. And then that evolved into opening being a resident Crowbar and other places, and then eventually opening a club called Movida with the people from Motherfucker in New York, who were, at that time, I think their claim was they created the word hipster, and they were a bit ahead of their time. And we had started this club, and I think we were a bit ahead of the curve. We had mixed. This is when Steve Aoki was playing for $50, and Justice played for $500. Those, now it's like add a few more zeros and times that by 2.
Oh, sure.
So, from there, I was deeply rooted in electronic music culture, and club culture, and also food culture. So, funny enough, we're Jason Neroni, who's one of your neighbors down here with the Rose Cafe, who's experiencing a lot of success in LA. He was bad boy chef, celebrated chef in New York, and we opened a restaurant. I opened a restaurant there actually called actually I don't even recall the name right now, but it was a Cuban-inspired restaurant. He was a consulting chef, and now it's come full circle because he's doing a pop-up dinner. The Rose Cafe is doing a pop-up dinner at Further Future. But after all these years of doing music-centric, electronic music-driven events, I think, and then meeting a group of like-minded people that are philosophically similar, but that they didn't come from music background. It was a good time to do something different, or use that platform from entertainment to do something more purposeful. So when you think about it, I would like to think of those years as kind of mindless entertainment, whereas now you're looking at a mindful entertainment. Elevating what you're doing to, you want to leave a legacy.
It's funny that you were involved with like Motherfucker and that whole scene. I used to do a party here in LA in 2005 with Steve Aoki was a resident, DJ Frankie Chan was a resident, I was a resident, and say it was like the 6 months before he popped kind of thing. And so like nobody was making any money and we were just doing it for fun. And that's how like we had Michael T come out and play. Michael T from Motherfucker came out and played for us one time, and I'm still in touch with him occasionally. But it's one thing. I then left LA and I was living in Berlin for 4 years, and I just moved back a couple months ago. And the big thing happening, it seems, is I guess the term I learned was transformational festivals. Which is this like I came back and I was like, what's this thing everybody's talking about? And it's oh yeah, dude, it's a transformation festival. Yeah.
I think we're trying to avoid that term for the future. I think the transformational festival to me feels a little bit woo-woo. It feels a little bit too, there's a certain almost like religious connotations to it, a certain awakening of some sort. I mean, I don't claim that we're going to be, we're there to transform you, but we're certainly there to make you think a little bit. We're certainly there to create deeper connections and create a platform where people can collaborate. And it's far more of a pragmatic approach. It's more, I think some of these transformational festivals, I think there's a good place for them. It's an inward journey of the spiritual awakening, I guess. Whereas ours is, I would think we're more, people are awakened and they're looking for something more. They're aspiring for something out there, and they want to meet like-minded people to create something. There's a certain entrepreneurial spirit about it. But if that's transformational, then yeah, so be it.
So what you're saying, your goals are a little more concrete. They bring it back into the real world where it's not just...
Yeah, I think we want to look at it as a little less nebulous, a little bit less vague. We have a more mature demographic. It's we're highly curated event. We focus more on the thought leadership side of things. And it's far more niche. I mean, I don't think in terms of the transformational aspect, there's a certain level of woo-woo to that, and there's a certain level of, it's a bit too vague. I mean, there's no end. I don't know if there's an end result coming out of this. I think for us, we're creating this environment where hopefully, if there was if we were a fly on the wall, we would see that there's a genesis of things, ideas, and projects. Blossoming from the connections created in this platform for the future at the event and post-event.
All these things sound laudable, but what is it that makes dancing to DJs on drugs in the desert like kind of the catalyst for this? And what is it about that, do you think, that makes it a good environment to create these things?
Yeah, I think that in itself is a misnomer, because while this event happens to be in an Indian reserve and on a desert, right now it's green actually due to the excessive rainfall.
Yeah, that's gonna be nice.
Our next event coming up will be in New York City, which is an urban environment, and we do look to be proliferating more and more of these events, satellite events around the U.S. And primary markets. So it's not necessarily the desert. While our lineup has a significant amount of electronic music, it's generally electronically inspired. So there are shoegazer bands. I mean, Farside is not electronic. I mean, Low Leaf plays electronic harp. Still Corners is a shoegazer kind of band, and Tropica Cancer is kind of like emo. But I think there's a certain cerebral aspect to electronic music, and it evokes certain emotions at particular times of day, depending on when you're out and about. And I think that creates an environment of conviviality, I think, and for lack of better terms, mind expansion, and not necessarily through drugs or getting intoxicated, but through just interaction, through self-questioning, and through debate and conversation.
I wonder if it. And I'm not asking you to justify it. Yeah. I'm asking to, I hope it didn't come off that way. But I'm curious to,
But why not? At the end of the day,
why not?
why not?
Why not have a hayride?
Yeah, it is.
Or have
I think being high and dancing in the desert, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good time. And I think most people
no judgment
wouldn't
space
argue
here.
that. No one would argue about that part. There's a positive transformational quality to letting yourself go to great music, and it doesn't have to be electronic music. It could be Pink Floyd, which could be Grateful Dead. It could be a nice piece of classical. But I think a surreal environment lends itself to that kind of experience as well. So,
and then would you say it probably maybe breaks down the barriers? So if you then do go, because you guys have like panels or kind of more, formal conference elements as well.
Yeah, if you deformalize the environment, I think you'd get a more sincere interaction. I mean, if you look at it, if you're sitting there, I mean, how much really gets done with a name card and a suit and tie name card with business cards being exchanged, and everyone's out there and their purpose is to sell, and there's no sincere connection, and there's an agenda. But if you're looking in a social environment where everyone is coming from a level playing field, and their agenda is not necessarily there to buy or sell anything. They're there to have a good time and to also maybe have a few takeaways and be enlightened by people who are domain experts in what they do. I think that's far more effective in a relaxed social setting.
Right. How do you control that? How do you filter for people who might want to come there with such a rigid agenda and kind of spoil the vibe?
Well, some would think that we use a code system to do that, because we do have a code system which helps. Which people think is an air of exclusivity or elitism. But actually, for us, the code system acts as a natural filter for us to open dialogue with the guests or potential guests that plan on coming, so we can understand each other better. And having that rapport with your audience is really important in developing the product. Now, how do we filter people out? I think the product itself is a natural filter. I mean, are you interested in a highly curated, discerning experience? I mean, do you like trying Japanese whiskeys? Are you interested in vertical farming? Are you interested in not just being on drugs and dancing in the desert? Are you interested in a little something more with your experience? Do you want to be on top of mind? I mean, do you want to be understanding of what's currently happening in our world from a technology standpoint, from an art standpoint, from a wellness standpoint? I mean, it's a certain it takes a certain personality to want to appreciate this sort of lifestyle, and I think it's something the more evolved are interested in, and certainly the more mature are interested in. There are people who are experts. There are experts from the domain of wellness that want to learn more about technology. There are people in the technology field that want to learn more about what's happening in the music world, and all those touch points coming together and cross pollinating really creates an interesting dynamic.
Let's say I'm at home. I'm listening to this podcast. I'm like, this sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I want to go to this. I want to go to this event. I want to. Yeah. What is the process? Because it's you say it's a code. Like, is it an invitation process, or how does?
No, it's extremely easy process. You simply go online, go fearofthefuture.com, and you could say request a code. You click on that, or request a ticket. Click on that, and then there's a really short Q&A, which is kind of which is like a few questions that kind of a get to know you kind of question, and the dialogue begins, and then you're issued your code. You redeem the code. You have your ticket, and then at that point, it's kind of basically going to any other remote festival in the U.S. Transportation, whether it be flight or ground, finding accommodations. We try to make sure for us. One of the things we try to push is guest centricity and making people's lives easy. A pull experience versus push. We want to make sure that we provide you with everything that you need to come to this event. It's 40 minutes from the Strip, from Las Vegas Strip. We have a huge range of dining options. There's various panels. It covers all sorts of topics. There's music and entertainment 24/7. The reason why we pick Vegas is there's low weather risk. There's a innumerable amount of accommodation options, so you don't necessarily have to stay on site. And even on site, there are numerous price points. And if you don't like any of them, you can rent RVs or stay off site. And you can even self-camp. I mean, we have a weekend pass, we have a Saturday pass, we have a Sunday pass, so you don't have to experience the whole thing. You can zip in, zip out. If you're just interested in listening to people like Eric Schmidt or Bob Pittman speak, you can come in on Saturday afternoon, have a nice brunch, listen to a talk, catch a band, and get a spa massage and take a yoga class at sunset and be off with the rest of your weekend. It's elsewhere.
So who decides? Like you say, like you fill out, you fill out the questionnaire.
Yeah.
Who actually reads them? Who's deciding?
Well, we actually do. So this is one aspect of the company where we take a lo-fi approach, where we take a really we take seriously and take a one-on-one approach. We reply. We have a team of people internally, including ourselves, that actually reply to people who are interested in going and finding out what interests you about this event, what doesn't interest you about this event, or do you have questions about what this is all about, and is this something that you would be interested in going? I mean, I don't think it's not a filter of where we're there to tell people no, we're bigger than thou, and this is the gatekeeper, and we don't think you belong, we don't think you fit.
Has that happened? Have you actually gotten ticket requests that you were like, no, I don't.
There's been a few rare instances, and I think any organization would probably agree with our approach on that. When people think that are we going to see tits and bare boobs out in the desert? I mean, that sort of thing is not what we're about, and that's certainly not acceptable. So that sort of behavior.
People have actually asked that, like,
you have people like there's certain elements that are certainly not attractive to it doesn't align with our ethos, and it's not the type of element we want for our event nor the crowd that we're expecting.
So, because everybody knows if you want to see boobs, the best way to see boobs is to pretend you don't, want to see boobs.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
All right, well, thanks for coming on. I know you just have a little bit of time in LA, so
yeah, thank you, Josh.
Appreciate you coming
it,
out,
and I hope you can make it out.
A great philosopher once wrote, "Naughty, naughty, very naughty."
But we were just talking about, when we met a year ago for an interview, you were feeling. I got the sense you were feeling challenged by dance music.
I was saying, I mean, I've always felt a bit challenged by dance music and what's happening all around the world. And there's always been a million things I've wanted to change in the 3 decades, and each interview that I do would be like my answers would depend on the questions that are posed to me. So if we're asked about things that I'm disliking about the scene, then the interview would come across as me being more challenged. Whereas if we was talking about, depending on which questions, because there's a lot of positives that are happening. As always, there's always positives and negatives with everything. And generally I like to be positive about things, but I also feel as one of the scene's elders, it's my duty to stand up and be counted. When it comes to voicing opinions about where things can be better,
right?
I think it's important.
So I mean, so I'll take a little bit of that. That it might have been my leading, because I'm having lived in LA previously and then moved up to Berlin.
That interview, if I remember rightly, was after the whole Jamie Jones interview.
Yes,
and
that did come up.
A lot of it was around that, So obviously, my opinions would be about the questions asked.
Right. So that said, I distinctly remember once or twice thinking like, okay, you were very much like, you're like, but I don't want to be negative.
Yeah.
And you would start talking about stuff you were into. Yeah. And then by the end of the answer, you were kind of pissed off.
Yeah. It can be like that sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
But, like I say, I'm always prepared to stand up and say things as they are. And sometimes it gets me into trouble, but what the hell?
Right. So what exactly about that interview? Because you said it's being passed around. Was it?
Well, I think
people upset about it.
It's very positive. You know, like people like it that I, say things as they are, and I'm honest, and you know, I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve, and my fans appreciate that, and I think a lot of people in the industry appreciate it as well, especially those producers and DJs that are not part of the huge hype machine. I'm always prepared, like I say, to stand up and be counted.
Okay, so how do you feel? How do you feel now? Because a year ago you were trying. You were.
I actually feel very positive about what's happening at the moment. Of course, I can still sit here and bitch about EDM, and I can bitch about people charging too much and milking the scene, and raising prices for the end users and stuff. But at the same time, there's a lot going on. It's an international scene with millions and millions of people that like to dance, and there's lots of good, fresh, young talent coming through. There's lots of good young DJs coming through. There's great music happening. I'm enjoying what I'm doing at the moment with my own productions and my label and my brand. So it's all very positive. I'm having a lot of fun right now.
Okay, good. So how was like last night's party, for example?
Last night was fun. I mean, it's a great venue, Le Chateau.
It is. It's a cool spot. Yeah,
it's a beautiful venue. It is in Hollywood, so it does attract a certain crowd that are there not for musical reasons, which is good. That pays the bills and allows the club to be able to book DJs, international talent that are not cheap, and do things properly. We had a great party. There was a lot of the Superfreq people came, a lot of good people, a lot of good people in the dance scene, people I haven't seen in a little while, because I haven't DJ'd in LA for a while. And there was lots of faces that I was very happy to see. The dance floor was packed from start to finish. We had a great time.
Yeah.
People were getting down and having fun. And, obviously it was a little bit more bottle service and tables around the outside, but the dance floor was where it was at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's something you just have to deal with in most places, where you have to accept that, like, there's going to be.
I think it made for a good party. There was a lot of good-looking people there.
There was
people having a good time.
It was an extremely good-looking crowd.
People were dressed up. They were having fun. It was fun everywhere. I only got asked for hip hop 3 times, so that's not too bad.
It's funny because I actually, when I arrived, the previous time I had been to that club, they were using the entrance on the opposite street.
Yes.
So I walked up there, and there's another club in that same complex, and I'm looking and I'm like, it's booties and high heels, and I'm like, I don't think this is the party I'm trying to go to.
They do have an entrance on the other side,
but it was I was surprised even going over to your party. There's still a lot of high heels.
Yeah,
a little less hip hop, a little less booty.
Yeah,
but
lots of good looking girls.
Lots of good looking girls.
That's how we roll.
All right, nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that.
But so you played, and then you had, and Kate played, Kate Simcoe, who I'm actually having in here right when you're done.
Right. Okay,
so
cool.
going back to back.
Nice.
But I got to say that when I did the interview last year, I wasn't real up on what you had been doing.
Okay.
Again, because I was overseas, and there's only so much you can bring in, and
absolutely.
I know your stuff. I've been to the end, all that, but after our interview, I was like, he sounds like he's still on top of things. I should probably check out one of these 8,000 Superfreq promos I've gotten sent. Go back to the emails, and it's really good stuff.
Yeah.
So what's going on with the label right now?
Well, there's lots. We're going through a transitional period at the moment because of the whole Beatport going under debacle. So we've just left Baseware, which was an arm of Beatport. We've got a new distribution, and we're with Burnside, who are an arm of Orchard. So we've just gone up from like a dozen outlets to 700 outlets. Well, that happens next month, so that's really exciting. We've been doing slightly bigger profile parties in London. And now here in LA, we're going to do a few bigger parties. We're going to do some undergrounds as well. As far as the label is concerned, we're going to start releasing more albums. There's a few of the artists that are ready to do albums now. Genre and E-Machinery for sure. I'm working on my own solo album that should be finished by the end of April. Jay Tripwire's working on an album. Noel Jackson, one of our partners, is working on an album also. Low, another artist we've just had a release with, their current EP, he's working on an album. And we're going to start putting together some original compilations as well with our own artists. So they'll be like, I like to call them collections rather than compilations. So, I want to release maybe 3 collections a year of all brand new material from Superfreak artists.
What's the difference to you between
I
the
think
two?
a compilation is when you just pull together a bunch of tracks.
Okay.
Whereas a collection is when you get artists to make music.
So it's all original.
It's all original.
See, yeah.
There's not going to be anything like this. It's all going to be original material. I'd like to do one remix album a year that's remixes of the most popular of those tracks in the collections. And we're going to start doing some down-tempo stuff and some ambient stuff, some like real listening music. And that's why I'm interested in seeing the artists making albums, because they can start to step outside of the box and not just do straight-up dance music, and can get a little bit more smart with an album and do stuff that is really good for listening to at home, at dinner, a bit more laid back in the background rather than pounding dance floor music. So that's going to open up what the label's about a little bit more. So it's an interesting transition that we're going through.
So now you said, pardon me for going back a little bit, but what exactly, for those who don't know, and I'm not up on the latest minutiae, what's going on with Beatport?
Beatport has gone under. They've filed for bankruptcy.
Well, SFX has filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
My understanding so far is that operations within Beatport are still...
They're still ongoing.
They're
still ongoing. But for us, we felt it was time for a change because we need the labels going through this transitional period, and I think a change that's going to give us access to a lot more outlets is going to be better for us. So we're not just going to appear on iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, and Stompy, Beatport. We're going to appear on Traxsource, Bleep, like you name it, we're going to be appearing there. So all of a sudden, we're, as a label, we're in the marketplace for e-commerce in many, many more outlets. And that will be for streaming as well, So obviously, if you're that much more visible, you're going to get that much more attention.
So why did you wait? What were the advantages
when I started
of staying?
working with Baseware, and they've been great, by the way. They're really good people there, and we've had a good relationship with them. But it was a 3-year contract, and that's just run out.
Okay,
runs out this month.
Okay, so there wasn't like benefits for like if you're just on these few networks, you get maybe like better placement or.
No,
things like that.
For us, it's about being seen. You need to get out there as much as possible. And there's certain people that go shopping for music online, and they won't go to certain sites like Beatport or whatever. And there's some people like they only shop on Bleep, or they only shop on Traxsource, or they only shop, and we're not there. So therefore, they're not buying our material, and our material is not being even seen or noticed by these people. So the broader the broader your outlets, the broader your audience, and I think that's very important right now for where the label's going.
Right. So how does that compare to like back in the 90s when it was all about getting into certain record stores?
It's a similar thing, it's the distributors are vital. Back in the day, you'd need a distributor that was going to make sure that you was in all the best record stores and the specialist stores around the world. And some distributors were really good at it, and some weren't. And back in the day, I find some of the bigger distributors would maybe have you in your big HMVs and our price and all the rest of it, but they wouldn't necessarily have you in the right marketplace. So I think the distribution is vital. And I think it's the same digitally. The digital market's all a bit crazy anyway with piracy and everything else. But I think that you need to be with outlet like the right distributor that's going to make sure that you're in the right outlets where your demographic is going to go and shop.
So it's funny you mentioned HMV because I remember the first time I ever went to Europe. I was 21, 22 years old, just finished university, and literally I landed in London, and first thing I did was I went to an HMV, and I couldn't believe how good the dance music selection was.
Yeah, I know.
Coming from
this is the same. If you went to like Virgin or Tower or any other big chains, they like in France, Fnac, and there's lots of different countries have their own big big chains of music, and I think most of them stock dance music pretty well. And even if you go into big stores here, I mean, you go into Amoeba, they've got an awesome dance music selection in there.
Yeah, especially coming from America at the time, and this would have been the late '90s, where the big chain stores didn't necessarily have that much selection, particularly if you were
Europe was a different ballgame.
A city like Detroit. I just hit stop flashing, so I'll check. And then it's funny because that night, the second thing I did, was go to the End.
Yes.
So literally, my first night or second night, I want to say first night ever in Europe was in London, and we went to the End, and
What was the event?
Couldn't possibly tell you. It was one of those nights where one of those terrible nights where just everything possible goes wrong.
Oh dear.
But first of all, it was my friend who I was staying with, who I had met him as an exchange student when he was in America a few years prior, and we had stayed in touch, and he was basically in the process of breaking up with his girlfriend to the point that night, as history would then show, that night was the last time they ever spoke, and she was out with us.
That sounds like a bundle of laughs.
It was that kind of night where I think he went off for a while, and he was going to try to maybe find something around the bathrooms, and he was gone. And then I find his girlfriend off with some guys in the side room, and I'm like, "Have you seen your boyfriend?" And she's like, "Fuck him, I don't know." And turns out he had left the club, and then had come back, and it was next thing you know, night bus to Putney.
To what?
To Putney.
Oh right,
which is like the last.
Yeah, night bus is not great on festive days.
Not how you want to be ending your first night, but I did get to go back.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years later, same friend, better girlfriend, and it was one of I think it was Milk and Two Sugars night,
okay, right.
And had a fantastic time.
Cool.
You're the first person I've had on this show that's actually run a club.
Okay.
So I want to get into that a little bit because I think it's an interesting side that a lot of people don't see.
Yes.
So what made you want to start?
Well, I've always put on events, and to have our own venue in London was a bit of a dream come true. And my partner Leo Paskin approached me with a project. His father was commissioned. His father's an architect, very, very good one, for a company called PKS, and they were commissioned to turn this building into a space for some sort of something. Who knows? And Leo was talking to his father about it, and he went and saw the venue, and his wheels started turning. And a mutual friend, Paul, said, "Have you spoken to Richard about this?" And he said, "No, this is a good idea." And Leo called me and said, come and have a look at this venue. And we went and had a look at it, and was like, well, if we did this and we did that and change this and change that, it could be something quite special. And that was what got the ball rolling on the project. And from then it was just this really exciting thing to be doing in London, and changing the way things are in London, or were in London, was a real challenge and a very exciting prospect, because up until that point nightclubs in London weren't that great. The sound systems weren't brilliant, security were assholes, they would be turning off the water in toilets so people couldn't get drink free water and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You couldn't wash your hands after going to the loo. It was very unhygienic. And there was lots of things that were wrong. You get shit drinks with no ice, and just the wrong crowds, and some often terrible music in the West End of London. And we had an opportunity to be able to come in and do something that would change that and change the face of clubbing in London, which we did. On building the End, we became the blueprint for all modern day bars and clubs, and that has now reverberated around the world. And I go to clubs all over the world, and I see where the End has been an influence, and the legacy of what we've done is quite magical. So it was something that was a bit of a dream come true.
Mm-hmm. I read there was what was the sound system that was in there?
It was a
killer.
Thunder Ridge X2000. 2000. Thunder Ridge, they used to be called Sonic's Concert Sound, and then they changed to Thunder Ridge. And we started off with a 4-way crossover, and then they invented a 5-way system to go with the new OmniDrive. OmniDrive designed a new 5-way digital crossover system, and Thunder Ridge designed the X2000. They patented 19 different points of sound dispersion, and come up with something special. And I remember when we was renewing it, and people are saying, "You're changing your system." We're like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Why? You've got the best system in the world." We say, "Well, it's just about to get better." So it was a pretty amazing system, and for me, it was in many ways like the precursor to the Function One.
Yeah, no, it definitely had that sound, and you're right, because I think a lot of people don't realize, unless you've been clubbing since, because it opened mid-90s.
Yeah, we opened December '95.
Okay, so
in January,
right in the middle.
2009 we closed.
Okay, so it was. Before that, it was just a lot of often not so great bass bins, just boxes stacked on top of boxes, and
This first system.
No. Before the end. Yeah,
generally, yeah. And clubs that didn't really pay much attention to their sound systems. There were the exceptions. Ministry of Sound always had an amazing system. Certain clubs, the Camden Palace, had a good system, but it wasn't something that if you went to New York, all the clubs had great systems, and London needed some of that, and the End gave that. And it wasn't just about the system; it was about the way that we designed the venue generally and made it user-friendly. It was a club set up for clubbers by clubbers, and I think that's what made it special.
So what was going on? Because I think a lot of people now don't really have a picture of what I think the late 80s rave stuff in the UK has gotten a lot of attention, and then obviously by the time we get to the end, there was, like you said, the start of kind of the more the modern club techno club phenomenon. What bridged that? What was there in the middle?
Well, there was a few clubs in London. There was Club UK, was a really good bridge down in Battersea, but from the late 80s underground scene that went really big. Excuse me. And became like a rave scene, and like all these big, you had all the big orbital parties and all these big rave parties, and the music kind of got a bit cheesy and a bit hard and a bit ravey, and that kind of took away from what the real underground house and techno was about. And there was lots of big warehouse parties going on and big club parties, and I think the End was able to take the good quality of the attitude of those big house and techno parties and bring it into a spot that it could call home, like a real club that had the right facilities to do something properly for house and techno music. And I think the bridge was warehouse parties. I was doing warehouse parties and underground illegal parties all through the early 90s, right. And through 93, 94, and 95 I was doing club events as well, and they got bigger and bigger. Like I was doing my label Plink Plonk Records with my partner Paul Rip. We were doing parties in 93 called The Drop, illegal warehouse parties, 2 rooms of music, and we did that on a monthly basis. And then we started doing slightly bigger parties called Vapor Space, where we started small with a 300 people club, and then went up to a place called The Site in Piccadilly, and that was like a 700-800 people venue, really nice room. And then we moved to the Fridge in Brixton, which is a 1,500 people room. So it was getting bigger and bigger, like in clubs for us. And I obviously stopped doing those events once the End opened. But that was, for me, the precursor to the End, was putting on larger and larger club events to build up to something that was ready to go, right, this can go home.
Into the venue. So that seems to be the case a lot, but I think that something that gets missed is, I don't know if it gets missed, that might not be the best way to put it, but having the reliability. I think there's a lot of a lot of people romanticize the wildness of, like not knowing where you're going and map points and weird warehouses.
A lot of fun. I mean, look, warehouse parties are always going to be good fun. There's a sense of danger about a warehouse as well, and that adds to the adrenaline and the excitement.
But at the same time, you don't think of a lot of truly profound musical things that have come from that. It's usually it's the Hacienda, it's the End, it's Berghain, it's
but
DMZ.
How did these things get to where they were? I mean, for me, like warehouse parties, especially like in 1988 when the rave scene started, the Rip parties in Clink Street in London Bridge that Paul Rip, my Plink Plonk partner, organised, were unbelievable. And that was a real game changer for music in London, and that was where the rave scene was born from. All the big rave promoters were there at Clink Street, scratching their heads, thinking, "Oh, I can make some money out of this," And it started there, like real acid house culture, and I think that then went into clubs. So I think places like the Berghain, they've got the history of Berlin to thank. Of
course.
Like clubs like VMF. Planet, Tresor, they were all a precursor to clubs like the Berghain and Catablau and etc. And it's the same in London. Clubs like The End came out of the ongoing rave scene and the ongoing warehouse scene. And it was like, the first year of The End was quite tricky. There was a lot of people that were used to going to our warehouse parties that they weren't sure about going to a glitzy central London club. And they were like, really? Is that what we're going to do? That they weren't used to that. But once people got used to the idea that this was a really good, comfortable building that was specifically designed for people to go and dance and enjoy and form community in, then their minds changed and they started to, get into the idea that clubbing could be the way forward rather than being in warehouse parties and raves. But, all of the big clubs around the world, probably with the exception of Ibiza, because they've always had big clubs, but all of the big clubs around the world have an underground to thank, and that comes from warehouses and people doing things the alternative way.
Right. So did you happen to see? It came out in the past week. The article, but one of the founders of Block Festival wrote an article.
Yeah, that he's retiring because the ravers are all shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see it. Yeah.
What's your take when you see something like that?
I think that it makes me giggle that maybe he's doing it wrong. People get older. And, some people might say, well, you know what, this is no longer what I am into. And they might not be prepared to put the time and effort into doing what it is they are into. And I think that's where, we have to look at what's going to be happening in the future. It would be very easy for someone like myself after 3 decades in the industry to say, the young kids, they don't get it and I'm going to give up. But what about all the people that are a bit older that are looking for something quality to do? What about those kids that get into the scene, into the more mainstream scene, and then discover something that's a bit more special once they dig below the surface? And I think it's up to people that really believe in what they're doing to make the effort to do something a bit more alternative if what is in the mainstream isn't of their fancy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found his romanticization of the warehouse thing a little over the top. Because, and trust me, I discovered house music listening to Green Velvet do a live PA in Detroit in a warehouse in 1995, where he said, you're playing house. And I was like, oh my God, this is house music. And so I get it. But on the other hand, it definitely felt like, where is that middle ground where it's, there's clubs like in Hollywood, like we talked about, where it's a very adult crowd, but then there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily there for the music. And then you go to warehouse parties, which there's a plethora of in LA right now.
Yes, there are.
And everyone I go to feels completely neutered, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I haven't been to any that I've been like, I've been to one. And it was because it was 98% gay.
Right.
And so it was like, it just had that right energy.
Yeah.
And it was, Honey Dijon and Matrix Man were playing.
Right,
so
sounds good.
Great music.
Yeah,
but
I believe. I think I haven't been to many warehouse parties of late because I'm DJing around the world, and it's not often that I have a weekend off, and if I do, I tend to do something more to add to the quality of my life outside of the music industry. So I haven't been to like that at many warehouse parties in the last year or two. You know, when I think back to the warehouse parties that we did at Superfreq, they were all awesome, like proper, authentic underground warehouse parties. And we're actually going to do some more undergrounds. We're looking at a couple of spaces, small, 250 people. Like, we're going to do some really cool little underground warehouse parties and build something back up here in LA for ourselves. And when we do Superfreq events, they're never neutered. We do it right. We get a good system in, we get nice lights in, lasers, and we've got a good crowd that are up for it. They're educated, they know what they're doing. They're going to come out, get dressed up and have a lot of fun and misbehave. So, you know, we're excited about that. I can't really comment on what others are doing because I haven't.
You haven't been out and around.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so what areas are exciting you not in LA, but like what parts of the world beyond the obvious? You know,
it's kind of everywhere. You know, there's you know, all the big cities in the world have got a great scene going on. You know, Paris is really good fun to play. Like Concrete is amazing. Obviously Berlin, the Berghain and Panorama Bar, the Katerblau, which is the new Katerholzig, which was the new bar. Yeah. You know, there's lots of things going on. There's like I'm going to be back in Berlin this Thursday and playing at Renate. I know I'm going to have a great time. You know, there's lots of stuff going on in England, in London, obviously Ibiza. I've been travelling around a lot. I've been having a lot of fun in Australia. I've been going back there once a year and having fun there. Obviously in Asia, there's some stuff. I did an Asia tour last June, and that was pretty awesome. I went to Phnom Penh, in Cambodia and Siem Reap, and I played in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore, and I went to Manila for the first time, which was pretty good fun. Small underground after hours, and there's good things happening everywhere. You know, you go to Brazil, to Sao Paulo or Santa Catarina, the Warongui, the Edge, and these sort of clubs are great. In Ecuador, there's a club in Montanita called Lost Beach Club, and it's possibly one of the best clubs I've ever seen. It's a big outdoor space, and then they've got an indoor cave club as well, and they've got big upstairs terrace. There's like 3 different areas of music, and it's amazing. It's really, really, really good. And so it really depends. Like, you know, Mexico, there's always great things going on, like hard pop in Juarez, La Santanera. You know, in Monterrey, they've got good stuff going on. You know, it's everywhere. Like, you know, I always have fun when I'm in Brooklyn. You know, I had a great time last night, and I'm sure if I go to warehouse parties here, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to be with my friends, and it's going to be good. It's going off. I played a really good warehouse party by Reverse Events in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. That was awesome. You know, it's the whole world. It's going off.
So, and is it when you go to places like when you go to Asia, is it still? Is it being driven by locals? Is it being driven by?
No, it's a lot. I think a lot of it's being driven by. There's some locals, but it's usually Brits abroad.
I guess that's what I was getting at. Yeah,
you know, wherever you find rave growth opportunities, you'll find British people, and so there is a lot of that. And it's underground. It's an underground scene in Asia. It's small and it's correct for this time in the development of Asia. Obviously, the EDM thing is big in Asia.
Of course, yeah.
So it's good to see that there's clubs like in Shanghai. There's a club called Lola that holds 350 people. That's amazing. You know, and it's good to see that there's people that are doing the right thing. Like the people that run like the Lola are Spanish. So you know, there's people. I find a lot of like. The rave community in developing countries is mostly Europeans.
Right. Is that just because Europeans travel so much, or because
well, the culture was really born in Europe and London, especially in England, especially. But the Europeans really got it. You know, America is the music comes from America. House music is from Chicago. Detroit came up with techno. New York came up with garage and the deep house sound there. And you know, that was what we used to create a scene within Europe. Yeah. And it was American music, but America did lag behind until the last decade.
Oh yeah, even like the early LA LA scene was driven by British expats living in London.
Yeah.
They're living in LA.
Yeah, and that's always how it's been. But it's good to see now that, you know, like America is full on into it. It is an amazing underground culture in America. In all the major cities, there's good things going on. So it's good to see that growth and to see America doing it for itself. It's very encouraging.
Yeah, it's interesting because I talk to a lot of, you know, obviously I have a lot of American expat DJ friends like in Europe, but I also have a lot of, you know, local Americans playing here. And one thing I've started to notice is it used to be you had to go to Americans had to go to Europe to get noticed in America.
Yes.
That was very much the cycle that you had to go through. That seems to be changing a lot.
I agree. Although Europe does kind of ignore what's going on in America.
Right.
Like, Europe doesn't really keep an eye on what's going on in America. America does keep an eye on what's going on in Europe, for sure. But America has really built its own scene up and it can sustain itself without Europe's interest. I do think lately there's been a little bit of more interest in Europe than there has been in the past, and that's encouraging. You know, people are actually saying, "Well, I've heard really good things about like what's going on in Brooklyn and what's going on in LA and what's going on in, you know, San Francisco and Chicago and Miami," and you know, that people are starting to hear a bit more in the last couple of years, and I think that's very positive for American artists and American talent and American labels.
Yeah, it's certainly it's great for anyone to not have to do the.
Well, like, you know, most of the big Americans that have been big for a while moved to Europe.
Sure.
To London and Berlin, and you know, and Holland, and you know, it's good that now that there's people moving back, and there's people that are based here that are doing their stuff here, and then they're exporting that to Europe, and Europe is becoming interested. So that's very positive and very healthy. I think what America needs now to really make it kick in is some really good vinyl distributors and manufacturers that are really hooked up with Europe. You know, at the moment, you know, I'm looking at doing a lot more vinyl for doing Superfreak vinyl again, and there's nothing in America like for doing good P&D deals and where you got, you know, good turnaround times, and I'm going to have to go to England to do it, which is a shame because Superfreak's an American label now. You know, I regard what we're doing as American, and it'd be nice to be able to do that from here and export to Europe, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case, which is a shame, and I think America needs that to really give it that step up. You know, why can't America have, you know, like the same sort of distribution as, like, you know, London has Juno and a couple of others, and you know, there's like, you know, what was it, Wax Records in Berlin, and Hardwax in Berlin, and there isn't really something like that. And then if there was more,
I guess there was, and they all died off. They all died off
but,
in the
mid
2000s. Yeah,
and there's a lot of people buying vinyl, and I think, you know, someone's missing a trick here. You know.
So is it an issue of manufacturing capacity here?
I don't know. I think it might be manufacturing. It's also distribution. I think there needs to be you know, someone that really believes in it, that's into the scene, that's into the music, that's into the labels, that believes in American talent, and is hooked up in you know, with other distributors in other territories in Europe and Asia and Japan and etc. So there needs to be someone that can go out and do that. It's not going to be me, but you know, I wish
Why not?
It was, because I've already got way too much to do. And not, if I could chop off like my two little fingers and stick them under grow lamps and clone myself a couple of times, I might think about it. But there's already not enough hours in a day for me. And also, I think I live in the wrong city for it. I think it needs to happen on the East Coast.
Just logistically.
Yeah. You know, it'd be easy for someone like a label here in LA to manufacture in New York and then distribute from there, you see. I think like New York would be the place to do it, or Miami or Atlanta, or, you know, East Coast.
Maybe someplace it's not so pricey.
Yes.
Like you could see it happening in Philadelphia or something.
Yeah, exactly. You know, hopefully someone will see a gap in the market and a money-making opportunity and go for it.
Cool.
Who knows?
So what else is interesting you right now? What
musically?
In general.
In general, politics.
Oh no! Here we go.
Yeah, I find it's getting entertaining now, isn't it? Politics, and I think it's good that politics are getting entertaining because it's making people actually look at what's going on around the world, and Trump is obviously, in my opinion, a huge idiot, but he's waking people up, and he's waking people up on the left side as well. And I find, the whole what's going on politically here with, I find it very, very interesting. I'd like to see Bernie take the Democrat seat, being a bit of a lefty myself. He really does seem like quite honest and everything. And the reason I'd like to see it more than, obviously, I think he's a good man for the job, would be the presidential battle between the far left and the far right would be kind of hilarious. How entertaining. It's like the big box office heavyweight championship, it'd be like, that's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be a lot of fun.
It's a little terrifying. I mean, I've been living overseas for 4 years and just came back a few months ago. So this is the first one in a while where I've been really.
Yeah, it is terrifying. But I actually don't for a second believe that there's any possibility of Trump actually becoming president.
They said that about Reagan.
I don't think there's any possibility at all. I don't even believe that the Republicans have actually got any chance whatsoever in any way. They've got no one. They've got no one who's going to come and do a proper job. Trump is an idiot. There was one interview that he did about the nuclear triangle, and he's like, "What's that?" I mean, anyone who's like, wanting to be president should know about the nuclear defense of the United States of America and their triangle, which is air, land and sea, and how they're going to control that. That's something that anyone who's into being a leader should look at and know, rather than just like being a troublemaker and encouraging people to be violent to people that have a different point of view to them. I don't think there's any way he could win. And it was it the Republican shadow foreign secretary, I can't remember his name, recently came out and said that if Trump got in, he would vote for Clinton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If he's presuming that Clinton. And that's a huge statement, and he's had to retract that and apologise and everything. But that's kind of huge, and so I don't actually believe, the mess that are right-wing politics. And the state of the world that it's in at the moment, with the elite rich and us balancing on the edge of another recession and all the crap that's going down. I don't think there's any room for right-wing politics in general and conservative politics. I don't think it's going to work in America, and so I don't think that there's a Republican candidate that would be able to stand up to Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun watching it.
Yeah, I mean, the Clinton thing makes me nervous.
Yes, I mean, she's just another puppet for the elite rich in the banks, like all presidents have been in the last couple of decades. It's all about being puppets for the corporates and getting paid by the corporates and financed by the corporates and then towing the corporate line. And that's why I find the whole Bernie thing quite attractive.
Well, I think everyone in theory, not everyone obviously, but anyone that we're going to talk to is going to. Yeah, like the ideas that Bernie has are going to...
Well, I mean, there's a lot of Trump supporters that are saying the same thing. A lot of the reasons that they like Trump is that he's self-funded and he's not being funded by the corporates. But he is the corporates, so
he's not funded by the corporates because he is the corporates.
And they're kind of missing that. He's not being funded. He can do what he likes because he doesn't have to answer to these people. Well, he is these people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that people are going to start slowly waking up to that. Whereas what's happening with Bernie being publicly funded is very, very interesting. Like people were saying that there's no way he would be able to compete with Clinton with the corporate funding that she has, and he's actually got more funding than she has through public donations, which is quite amazing for America.
Yeah, but Obama had massive amounts of small, public donations as well.
Yes, he did,
and it doesn't seem like it really pushed the needle too far. Although,
I mean,
it probably pushed the needle farther than everyone wants to say.
Has definitely been a puppet but he's also, in my view, been one of the most successful presidents in a long time. Like, if you look at actually a lot of the stuff that he's done, it's been quite interesting. He's same-sex marriage, equality for women, women's wages have gone higher, healthcare for people that couldn't afford it. He's done some amazing stuff, and you've got to tip your hat. And conservatives will be screaming with their steam coming out their ears at what I'm saying now, but it's the truth. It is what it is. And I find the whole thing, like living in America, you can't ignore this stuff. I've been finding that whole thing quite interesting.
Is it different in England? It's not so drawn out.
Yeah, it's not so drawn out. It's very different. It's not corporate funded, so it is very different in England. The whole process, and I think that's why England has a lot of a much more conservative voting public than America, because it's more realistic. The right side of politics there is more realistic than the right side of politics here.
I see what you're saying. So it's the right isn't as far right.
Correct.
So you could comfortably be quote unquote conservative.
Yes.
Without being I was gonna say a maniac, but same difference.
Yeah.
So I'll be honest. I'm not up. Has it always been that way in the UK? I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, England, like America, it sways between the right and the left all the time, but it's all kind of merged into the middle. But there's a guy in England who's very much like Bernie, and he's very left, and he's been causing Jeremy Corbyn, his name is. He's been causing a bit of a stir for the left and trying to pull the Labour Party further left towards being a more socialist party, which is very, very interesting. There's some similar stuff going on.
Now, let me ask you: in your travels and in your world, do you encounter Trump supporters?
No, I don't.
Right? I mean, I think it's important that
I don't. I haven't actually met anyone physically that said, I'm voting for Trump because of this. Yeah.
So these people obviously exist. I guess, we're living, Hollywood.
Well, all of the right-wing fascists are liking Trump, aren't they? The Ku Klux Klan. Supporters and stuff like
is that maybe what we're discovering? Is there's a lot more of them than we assumed. Like these quote unquote fringe.
I think racism is actually on the up all over the world, and it's due to what's been going on with war and driving fear into the world's population to keep us all under control. We're going through a very interesting time in human evolution and politics. We are evolving. People are thinking critically a lot more, and there's a lot of spirituality going down. People are getting into meditation and looking into finding themselves and what they're about and what their own soul is about and what their possibilities are. And I think this is scary for those that are in control, and because of that, these people that are in control of through the controlled media, etc., driven fear into the public and driven up prices. Like people have to do 2 jobs just to survive nowadays and pay their bills. It's not like you can have one job and have an expendable income and have a good quality of life. And the powers that be don't want that. They don't want people to have good qualities of life, because then they're going to have time to be thinking about things that are not about survival and not about fear and not about hunting and gathering. And it's the fear, and it's only fear that can actually keep the world's population from evolving as we're meant to, and for the elite rich to be able to retain the control that they've got. So that's what's going on. And I see that the fear that they're driving into us through propaganda, through their own media circles, is what's causing racism to go on the increase.
Interesting. So it's funny you say, like, I think about the hunter-gatherer, and then we need to get off politics, because I actually want to talk about, you know what? I'm going to stop this right now. Okay. Because I want to talk, and we have, with the time we have left, I listened to the podcast you did, the Rebel Radio podcast from a few months ago. And you actually spoke a lot about, meditation and mindfulness. And I know that's something that you're also very into with the infinite amount of time you have on your plate.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk about that a little bit. If you talk about how first of all, what is it exactly that you participate in?
Well, meditation, I think, is vital for everybody. I think everybody should do it. It's good for your health. It's good for your physical health. It's good for your mental health. It's just something that I think everyone should be taught in schools. It's not a religious thing. Anyone of any religious persuasion can do it, and it's about human evolution and making yourself happy. And I think as human people we deserve happiness. I think that's why the dance music scene is so big around the world, because it's in a way meditative. Like meditation it's not thinking, and mindfulness is about being in the moment and enjoying what's actually happening rather than being bogged down with thoughts about the problems of yesterday and the possible solutions of tomorrow. And I think with the whole party scene and going to dance is about coming into the moment and forgetting about all these problems and the fears that are being drummed into us by the elite rich media, and coming into this moment where you can celebrate life with fellow human beings and enjoy and party and have fun. And I think meditation is vital for coming back into what is real, or into the illusion that we think is real, and enjoying that for what it is rather than missing out on it altogether. Because if you're stuck in thought, you're not actually appreciating what's going on now, and now is all that we have. Why not enjoy every moment as though it's your last? And I think meditation can help you to find out how to enjoy every moment as though it's your last, and how to appreciate this very short amount of time that we have in this vehicle we call a body, and to be able to enjoy it. That's the only reason we're really here, is to be happy. And I think that is really important. It's important in my life, and it's important for me to be able to share techniques and information that I have with people that want to learn about themselves and about how they can be happy.
So what could you teach somebody, like, say, in the next 5 minutes?
In the next 5 minutes? Well, a lot.
Because it's a lifetime's work.
But it's a lot. I mean, it's about, enjoying the moment and enjoying what is actually going on. And that is about being mindful. Like when you're walking up the street, walk and take in what's going on around you. Try not to be stuck in thought about paying your bills. When you're in the gym working out, enjoy the workout. When you're, doing things, do those things. Don't be absent-minded somewhere else and be thinking about something else. Enjoy what you are doing in the moment. Enjoy going to the cinema. Enjoy going to the concert. Enjoy going shopping for food. Enjoy the walk up the street. Enjoy taking a shit. Enjoy the moment. Whatever it is you're doing in that moment, do it, and be in that moment and be mindful in that moment. And that will bring a lot more happiness and quality to people's lives. And meditation, which is about concentration to bring the body and mind to stillness, can give you that in a big, big way.
Yeah, I think most people, they don't realize the first step is even the recognition that, oh my God, you're right, I'm constantly prattling on in my own head about nothing.
Yes. And that's the way, it all goes back to politics. The elite rich want that. That's what we're trained to be this way.
Okay, interesting. I would think that because these practices date back much further than...
Yeah, and they're needed now more than ever before because of the way the world is and because of the way that we've all been programmed by the media. That's why it's important that we go back to these practices that are very, very old, because they're simple and they're real. These things are not rocket science. It's easy to meditate if you concentrate. A lot of people have struggles meditating, and they think, oh, I can't do this. I've got too many thoughts. I can't get rid of the thoughts. Well, that's because they're not concentrating on something else. Like when you're watching a movie, you're enjoying the movie and you're not thinking about the problems of yesterday. It's because you're concentrating on your interest. Your interest is on it. And that's what meditation is. Your interest must be on concentration.
Okay. That's a good way to put it.
So you become disinterested in these thoughts by being interested in concentrating on enjoying your senses or your breathing or your chanting of your mantra.
So I think people get frustrated, and this just like, and I suspect you've quite more practice in this than I do, But I think one of the best things I heard was it's the moment. I think a lot of people get frustrated because like no matter how hard I concentrate, my mind still wanders.
Yeah.
And there's this impression that if your mind wanders, you're doing it wrong.
No, everyone's mind wanders.
Exactly,
and you're not doing well. In a way,
the practice is the coming back. The practice is
well. The thing is to acknowledge thoughts. If you fight them, then they get bigger. Because you're putting energy and thought into the thought, which makes it bigger. So the trick is just to acknowledge it and accept it, and to become disinterested in that thought by being interested in your breathing or whatever it is that you're concentrating on. And that's where it really starts to work.
Yeah, it's kind of that moment when you're like, oh shit, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
I'm going to stop
But
now. That is the muscle you're building.
Even if you only get moments of stillness, it's working. You know, even if you like practicing concentration makes concentration easier. It's like going to the gym. If I went to the gym and I tried to lift 150 pounds above my head, there's absolutely no way that's going to happen. But if I trained for 6 months, I'd be able to do that quite easily. And it's the same with the mind. The body and the mind are very similar in many ways. If you train yourself to concentrate, you will become more focused as an individual.
So how does this all look in your life in particular? Like what is your practice?
Well, I don't understand the question. What do you mean?
I mean, like, what do you meditate every day? Do you?
No, I don't. No. I try to, but
Same,
we all fall off the wagon. And like I'll go I'll meditate like once a day. Generally, the weekends I don't. But this is a weekday practice for me, and it should be every day. But then, I'll go 2, 3, 4 weeks without practicing, and then I start to notice things getting tricky, things going wrong, things not flowing properly, and then I start meditating, and then within days it's all back to the goodness and flowing properly and easily again. And we do have to constantly remind ourselves that to like going. It's like going to the gym. We have to make ourselves go.
Yeah,
we have to make ourselves.
That's exactly like going to the gym.
It's no different. You have to make yourself meditate. You have to make it a priority.
Ironically, I think it's also made going to the gym easier.
Yes, yeah, it would do.
You get past that. Get past that pain. Get past that.
Yeah, and it's also great. I mean, for people in music. And any kind of artists, it's really good for creativity. The more that you can come to stillness, the more that you will fill yourself with an energy called sattva, and it's a very creative energy that brings you ideas. So for anyone who's creative in some way, and an artist in some way, meditation is going to bring a lot to the table with a lot of creative ideas. So that's also good.
Okay. So sattva,
S-A-T-T-V-A.
SATTVA for people who want to look it up.
Yeah.
And we only have like 2-3 minutes left.
Okay.
Anything else you want to like? What's coming up next?
Lots. I've got.
This will be out in about 2 weeks, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. There's lots going on. I'm producing quite a lot at the moment of music. I'm working on my album, which is going to have a lot of listening stuff on it as well as dance. So it's going to be very melodic and dubby, and it's a tripped out kind of album, but good for listening. I'm also working on a lot of straight up dance tracks that I want to shop to other labels. So I'm keeping very, very busy in the studio. With Superfreq, we've got some great releases coming up. The next release is going to be G Moore, who's a resident from Bora Bora, Ibiza, and a guy called B Vision from Brazil. G Moore lives in Brazil now, and that's a really nice project. David Scuba's just done a new EP with Finley, and that's got a Kate Simcoe remix on it.
Okay.
So that's going to be the release after that. It's very, very nice. We've got an awesome EP from Jay Tripwire ready to line up for after that. So we've got some great stuff coming out to be released in the coming months on Superfreq, and continuing doing parties around the world. I'm doing bigger events in London. The next Superfreq in London will be at Fabric on the 2nd of July, and then in September I'm doing another big Superfreq party at a new club that's very much like the End in London, called the Steel Yard.
I haven't heard of this one.
Awesome club, really good. It's like holds 1,000 people in 2 rooms. It's very much like the End, but one big tunnel instead of 2. Great system, really good management, good staff. Really, it's a proper nice place.
What is it about raves and tunnels? I guess London just has a lot of London just has the tunnels.
Yeah, there's a lot of tunnels, a lot of London under London. But the spot is amazing, and so I'm excited about doing more events there. I just did Superfreq's anniversary there 2 weeks ago in London. It was an amazing party, and I used it for the first time beginning of December last year. I did a 20th anniversary of The End with Leo and Bushwhacker, and Richie Horton was our guest, and that was an amazing event. So I think there's a lot of potential for this venue, and I'm going to be throwing Superfreak parties in there 2 or 3 times a year. So I'm excited about that.
Was this your first time doing an End event?
No, we did an End event a couple of years before, a place called Nettle House. As a reunion, it was just like let's come together and do an end party, and then so that was 2 years before, and that was really, really good. And then we decided to do, because it was the 20th anniversary, it's a special one, so we decided to do a 20th. We're going to do another one this year, I think. Well, I'm trying to work on Leo to see if he's up for it, but I think he is, because it's 21, which is also quite a nice one to do. I think 22, 23 might be a bit whatever. 25 could be a big one, but right. I'd like to do a 21st birthday for The End. I think that would be quite special, and come together, do something again.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for coming by.
My pleasure.
And, all right, awesome,
excellent, great interview.
That's it for this episode of the Rave Curious podcast. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more conversations with key players in the electronic music community. If you like what you heard on this podcast, let us know. You can give us a shout on Twitter at Rave Curious. You can also like us on Facebook, Rave Curious Podcast. And of course, subscribe on iTunes to make sure you never miss an episode. That's it. Thanks for listening.